Hey everybody, Jared Wade here with Chris Yoko from Yoko Co. Yoko Co. Which way do you prefer, Chris? Is it Yoko Co. or Yoko Co?
So from like a brand perspective, I know that we should have like a certain way that we say it.
Yeah.
I don't have a preference. I like Yoko Co because it's fun to say, and then Yoko Co sounds like SEO and CMS and all the abbreviations we use, so both feel appropriate to me. I'm sure at some point we'll say we have a preference, but for right now, if you're talking about us, it's a good problem to have.
Whichever way feels most natural to you, that is okay. I like that.
And for the holidays, we're thinking about like Yoko Co Cocoa, so that's even more fun to see.
Are you a cocoa drinker? Are you like, does your family drink hot chocolate and go that whole route of cocoa and whatnot?
Anyone with kids has got to be some form of hot cocoa family.
Do you have like a staple? This is how we always make our cocoa. This is how we always like. Do you put anything unique in it?
Oh, I wish I had I like cinnamon in mine, but that's about as fancy as we get. Otherwise, it's like, all right, and you got some chocolate and you got some form of milk, cream, plant milk, whatever. There's no wrong way.
Do you do a like a peppermint stick? Do you just like leave that sit there as your? Because we'll
I'm
do
not
like
a peppermint stick, but the girls, they have like Trader Joe's, I guess, has gone overboard on this. So they've got like the peppermint sticks and the peppermint powders and like rim stuff that you can put on it. They're all about like, I don't know. They've grown up with like not firsthand Instagram, but like secondhand Instagram. So like making drinks look fancy, I feel like is half the pleasure.
But do they taste
good? You guys big on like the peppermint sticks?
Yeah,
or do you mean like a
daughter.
Stick? I'll sometimes do like an actual cinnamon stick.
Oh,
but that's probably also for more aesthetics than taste.
You're big into cinnamon. Like you like cinnamon on everything. Because even in your tea, you put a lot of cinnamon in that too, don't you?
I like a cinnamon tea. Yeah, absolutely.
We don't do cinnamon in the cocoa, which we might try this year. My daughter's really big into the peppermint sticks, and then of course marshmallows and the air canned whipped cream, which is probably horrible for you. But
yeah,
you have a half cup of the cocoa and then like a cup and a half of the whipped cream.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Spirals up further and further.
Marshmallows, chocolate chips on top, some sprinkles.
Absolutely. We have started though making our own cocoa, which has been fun. So just kind of experimenting with like what different chocolates melt really well and which ones don't work all that well. So we're trying to maybe perfect. I think it's because we watched the Santa Claus, and every year we watch it, and we're like, oh yeah, you can make really, really good hot chocolate, hot cocoa. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But I'll tell you this much:
publish your findings. That sounds like very much like a Sarah Lewis thing to do, when she would have 10 different recipes, and through the holidays she would try them all out and then report back with like, this is what we found was our favorite.
I'll have to reach out to Sarah. I'll bring her on the show, and then she can give me a whole bunch of different recipes for people to try, and we'll just do like a multi-camera setup on her end where she's actually walking through and cooking something as we're talking about development or something along those lines.
You just go through her culinary conquest and like contest from back over the years. I'm sure she's got quite a few examples.
Okay. Sarah, if you're watching, you've just been voluntold that this is
that's what's
going to happen. So congratulations. I'm sure people that are joining us aren't here to listen to us talk about cocoa. And some people might, but today we are here to talk about conversations. And I'm interrupting this conversation that I'm having with Chris right now to talk about conversations and having those back and forth, that relationship driven communication on your website. That's what today's episode is all about. It's all about when you go to a website, when you have somebody visit your website, are you talking to them or are you talking with them? And there's a pretty massive distinctive difference between talking to somebody and talking with somebody, especially through the website. So Chris, you've been doing this for a long, long time. When did you figure out that there was that difference? And how did you approach websites after that light bulb went off?
I mean, I wish I could say like it was something that we knew or like had been educated on intentionally, but there are tons of like marketing models where you think about like where in the awareness cycle or the buyer's journey you intersect with somebody and like how you then guide them to a purchasing decision or whatever the case might be. And I have a background in marketing. So I think there was some of that knowledge that was kind of foundational. But then as we started working with more and more organizations that were not necessarily always trying to like sell someone on something. And I think also as like marketing evolved from a little bit of the whiplash of people always being sold to and now feeling like they're kind of more on the defensive to any kind of sales messaging. People are a lot more open to having a conversation. And if this is truly a product, a piece of information, or whatever it might be that solves my problem or is what I'm looking for, I'm interested in learning more about it. And so as we built sites over the years, we would see more and more organizations trying to build from the inside out. So a lot of organizations build like, these are our offerings, or this is the information we have, or these are the departments we have. And so each department gets its own little space on the website. And that's how people experience us. Not being mindful of the fact that everyone experiences the website in the way that they need it to. And so as we started getting into the analytics of it, you start to see like people are trying to solve their problems. And the more you can cater and adjust that conversation or your website accordingly, the more interested and engaged they're going to be.
So how that opens up in a really interesting, I mean, you're talking about the sales cycle and the process. How do you keep that journey? How do you keep that process from maybe not feeling as heavy as a blatant funnel and more of a relationship? Like, do you approach that differently?
Yeah, I definitely. So there's tons of literature and research and stuff out there around like the buyer's journey. And like you said, the funnel, and it's, the idea is start wide and like frog march people down through this funnel and then close.
Yeah.
Again, like we work with a lot of organizations that are trying to make a positive impact in the world. And as a part of that, they're usually not ones to try to force or twist somebody's arm behind their back to get them to make a decision. They don't like to play a lot of like the mind games or like the UX tricks, the dark patterns that exist on the web to try to get people to, through a squeeze page converted, get them to subscribe or to purchase or whatever. A lot of what we find is that the conversations they were having were emulating conversations they would have with somebody if they were having it in person. And I find that parallel works really well as a guide if you are somebody who can put yourself in your audience's shoes. So this process starts with understanding who your audience is. As many people are aware of like personas or ideal customer profiles, avatars. There's a couple different ways people refer to them, but we go through these personas, understand who those people are. And then in the same way that if you and I didn't know each other and we bumped into each other at like a networking event or something, hey, what do you do? What do you do? Da, da, da. You respond to the conversation naturally. And if I start to drone on about like, you should sign up for this program because we do X, Y, and Z, and I see you kind of get that blank look in your eyes and start to like look over my shoulder to see like, who else can I go talk to? And how do I escape this conversation? You can modulate that and be like, oh, you can re-engage in the conversation. What kind of things are you into, et cetera? And those little cues where you see people's eyes start to glaze over, they lose interest, can serve because that is likely a sign that they're also going to lose interest with the web copy or the story you're telling online. Chances are you have a longer bit of leash in an actual conversation because somebody's going to give you like the grace of being in a social situation to let you meander. Whereas online, they don't have to make eye contact with you and they're not going to embarrass you if they walk away mid-page load or like mid-paragraph. So it's all compressed online, but the same rules apply. And so you can use those conversational cues as you think about the conversations you would have with each of those personas and the things they're trying to accomplish and how it intersects with your organization and the kind of things that you provide.
Nice. So there's got to be some correlation with like SEO and AI and how one format maybe performs differently than another format. Can you talk a little bit about, that traditional SEO in contrast to AI, and does that still work the same way? Like if you build your website as more of a relational conversation, machine versus just straight up, hey, here's the information, there's got to be some unique differences between those two.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's obviously differences of, you don't get necessarily the same kind of interaction. It's at scale. You're not having a one-to-one conversation necessarily. You're having a one-to-many conversation. And as we've seen, it started with SEO. It's now been extended with AI, that the conversation doesn't start with you and your organization or your website. It's starting on platforms like Google, like Bing, like ChatGPT, like Anthropic. It'll probably make the most sense to kind of break it down first for the SEO, the things that change as a result of SEO, and then the things that are changing as a result of AI.
Mm-hmm.
On the SEO side, really common search queries. And actually, this is where we built our model. Hold on. I actually can share a visual on this that will make it make a lot more sense.
Oh boy, buckle up, everyone. Screen sharing is happening.
thrilling, right?
It is thrilling.
Let's see here. So let me know if that's showing up.
Yep, there we go.
So whenever we first started to notice this pattern happening on search, what we found is people move through the web like they move through a conversation, which is people tend to start on a topic very oblivious about something. As they learn more about it, they become curious. That curiosity transforms into intrigue. Once somebody's intrigued, if they continue to share interest, they usually become invested and at some point converted. And so what we found with SEO especially is a lot of oblivious and curious things were happening on search engines. So people might Google something. A good example for one of our clients is EMDRIA, the International Association for EMDR Therapy. And so at a time when a lot of people were just hearing the term EMDR therapy thrown around, there was a lot of curiosity or oblivious questions around like, what even is that? That evolves to then more of that curiosity. I've noticed like the reason I'm thinking or interested in EMDR therapy is I've been dealing with depression. Does EMDR therapy help with that? Great. If I know the answer to that, now I may become a little bit more intrigued. Is like, can I just go to the existing talk therapist that I go to and tell them I want to do EMDR? No, the answer is no. But then, okay, if it is no, how do I find somebody who is certified? How do I find somebody who's right for me? Because it's not just, do they know how to do EMDR therapy? It's, are they the kind of person that I feel like would get me and is the right treatment option for me, et cetera. And so that tends to be where somebody is really invested or they're preparing to invest. It's usually when there's some kind of investment of time or money or resources. And then for this client, we help them power their directory so you can find EMDR therapists across the world and figure out like which one might be best to connect with you. So once they say like, how do I find somebody? Great. Now I'm using the directory. I'm putting in certain filters and facets. Maybe I want to meet online. Maybe I want to meet in person. Maybe I prefer a male, a female. Maybe I prefer somebody with different background and experience, somebody with a specialty in PTSD, whatever the case might be. And so what we found is like, this is usually the spectrum that people move through as they're going through and having a conversation. It echoes what it would happen in person. So if somebody met somebody at a conference, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work with, EMDR therapy. What is that? It's the same conversation you might have in person if you, again, were the person on the other side of this equation. And so on like the SEO side, what we started to find is a lot of, your invested type of search queries are, how do I find X, Y, and Z? Who is the best X at Y? Who is the best endodontist at root canals? Who is the best financial advisor in the area near me? Who is the best at these things? When you move a little bit further out, it is, that intrigue, like, hey, what type of people help solve these kind of problems, et cetera. Curious tends to be when you are more problem aware. So, hey, I know that I want to be better investing my money, or I know that my tooth is killing me. And then oblivious, again, being able to really start at the symptomatic levels of search. And so anyone who's had like a medical issue or something has likely gone through this stage of searches, and we can talk a little bit more about that too. But a lot of this early stuff is happening in search. So this is where you drive a lot of volume. And then this is usually where you want people on your site to begin to actually have the conversation with you. And what we found in the AI side of things, not to drone on too long, is these stages, AI is beginning to basically answer the question in full. So rather than somebody engaging with your content earlier in the process, they're answering the question with AI and the importance of you showing up for these early stages of the conversation is if that does provide you with kind of authority and trust in these different large language models, when it comes time for somebody to say, hey, I am intrigued or I am invested and I do want to know who should I connect to actually talk about this service, product, whatever the case might be, you are more likely to show up for these later stages. And the traffic you generate, while these are high volume queries, they're very low quality. There's not the highest likelihood of engagement. You may get millions, hundreds of thousands to millions of visits here and very little engagement. The searches and the traffic you get around here, these tend to be very highly qualified, traffic, audience, prospects, and the likelihood of them converting or engaging with you in a meaningful capacity is much, much higher.
So you had mentioned that like that oblivious and that curious, that's step one, step two. You're noticing that AI is beginning to dive deeper into that early process or early phases, right?
Yeah.
And you can jump in and tell me if I'm completely off base, but I know a lot of conversations that I've had have been, and I'm paraphrasing this, but it's been very much a, hey, we're already kind of late to the game. We're already behind the curve, the cue ball, so to speak, the 8 ball. We're trying to play catch up. Why bother creating all of this early stage content if AI is just going to paraphrase it, rewrite it anyway? Like, what's the point in doing it with that stage 1, stage 2? How would you respond to a question like that?
Yeah. Couple different components. And I don't want to give you like a 10-minute answer to like a 30-second question. So feel free to interrupt.
We get some cocoa. I'll be right back. And
yeah. By the time you have it ready, I may be done with this answer. So on the first side, like I can definitely understand kind of the eye rolling nature of like, great, I should create more content to train the AI. And I think every organization and business needs to kind of do the math for themselves on like, okay, yes, is it worthwhile? Where I think you should be doing the math, or some of the variables I think you should factor in as you do it, is one, if you're not showing up and you don't have any content whenever AI is looking for this information, just like with SEO, like you don't exist. So like if your business model, your organizational, model growth comes from word of mouth referrals and in-person things, and you don't really care about showing up in search or online very much, that can be totally fine. But if you are an organization where you feel like, hey, a lot of the information we provide needs to be discoverable by people online, it's important for our organization to have like a well-rounded or diverse array of mechanisms for people to contact us and learn about us and communicate and engage, then I think it's worth at least considering having it as part of your mix. The other component of that is, well, one, I think you can treat AI, and one of the things we do with a lot of our clients is, in addition to those human personas you and I talked about earlier, and we talk about a lot, we also suggest that they do one AI persona, simply because that oblivious and curious content is answered in those platforms, and they can be great referral partners or centers of influence, depending on how you think about your marketing. And so if they have that information about who you are for those early stage answered, your oblivious and your curious questions, you have a better shot of them, one, the user clicking through and going like, well, wait, where are you getting this information from, LLM, and clicking through and finding you that way. But you also have a better chance if you have indexed well for those early stage things. What we've noticed so far, and this is something that could change as they update the models, but the models tend to defer a lot of their trust and authority signals to kind of your existing media landscape and network. So they intake the information from the search engines they're partnered with. Each LLM pulls all of its information from some form of search. And then it's looking at a lot of like trust and authority signals. How long has it been around? Are they mentioned in high authority publications? Your New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, things that seem to have a lot of journalistic integrity, et cetera, despite who owns them in some cases. And then being able to kind of use that as a signifier to say like, okay, this seems to be an organization that really has useful information on this topic. And if you're showing up early, you're more likely to show up late in the conversation. And those later stage conversations are where, like I said, people are more likely to engage with you in a really meaningful capacity. So setting that groundwork is a really good opportunity for you to show up later in the process and connect with people who will sometimes appear to have like come to you out of the blue, is because they were having so much of the conversation away from you. And then they're just showing up to be like, hey, I'm here to sign up for the thing, which is a good problem to have, but it's a problem you won't have if you don't show up earlier in those conversations.
So going back into kind of our core topic here of conversations and websites that are, having those focused on relationships, talking with people versus talking to people, where do you, and if you've got some examples that you want to pull up as you're explaining, I am 100% on board for that. I'll just give that as a free, throw out there. Where do you feel like if I'm a communications director and I'm staring at a homepage, what's a question that I can ask myself that brings me back to a real human conversation instead of that web copy mode? Because as we keep talking about AI and SEO, and I think a lot of people just look at AI and say, oh, that's going to write everything for me. That's going to do everything that I need to do. If you're going to keep that human element in there, how do you keep the website moving in the direction of conversation without it feeling like it's robotic almost?
Sure. So thank you for the tee up to show an example.
Yeah, because I think you could do a fantastic job explaining, how it could work. But if we could walk through maybe an example of noticing how a fantastic website walks through that process, I know that would help a lot of individuals that are in associations or nonprofits, and they're just trying to tell people their story. They're just trying to tell people, hey, this is what we do, this is what we offer, this is who we support, and their website is of course, the best way for them to do so. So yeah, if you've got anything that you would like to walk through, let's jump into it.
Well, we'll do it live. There's always some risk with that, but let me know if you can see yourself.
There's me.
Okay, so I'll do one. We've worked with this organization for a long time, and I feel like it's something where anyone who's had tooth trouble can relate to it. So rather than going through the entirety of the funnel, just because that'll take a long time,
Yeah.
we'll go through like the most important, like engaged components. So you've gone to the dentist, your tooth is killing you. They tell you you need a root canal. Most people, they're going to come in and go like, okay, well, what is 6-7?
8-9. That's how I diffuse it right now.
Organization we work with, American Association of Endodontists. This is one of the most important pages in their ecosystem. So if you're not familiar with what an endodontist is, they are specialists who focus just in saving teeth. And the primary procedure that they do is a root canal. So they're like, we're the people who need to show up whenever somebody wants to know what a root canal is, which is a question a lot of people are prompted by usually their, more day-to-day dentist.
Sure.
So this would be, rather than oblivious content in this regard would be like, why does my tooth hurt? More of the symptomatic stuff. Your curiosity queries would be a little bit more around something like, okay, if my tooth hurt, it could be because of these different conditions. You could have a gum infection, you could have a deep cavity, you could have an abscess, whatever the case might be. What are the best treatments for the thing that I have? One of them might be a root canal. So this is usually a little bit more towards the intrigued and invested side of things, but it, I think, encapsulates really well what somebody might do. So somebody might say, well, what is a root canal? They're going to come in here, learn a little bit more about what a root canal is. And also, most people, I think, day to day don't really know what an endodontist is or what that specialty is focused on. So this is usually also where they're becoming aware that, oh, just a normal dentist isn't the person who's most optimal to, perform a root canal. What is an endodontist? So we're going through, we're learning a lot more about all of this. How does it go about saving the tooth, etc. With the thing being at the end, you go like, oh, so these are professionals who basically dedicate their entire professional life to the art of preserving my tooth, as opposed to a general dentist, which is doing a little bit of everything, more the generalist of your mouth. And so moving from that intrigued to invested or to converted area would be, hey, now that you know these people exist, do you want to find one in your area? So you come in, you say, hey, I want to find an endodontist. Let's go with our office address here. So we're going to come in, we're going to take a look, and now we can see all kinds of endodontists around us. And then you may start to get more into the converted stage of things. So converted is going to be, great, I get to see that these are the folks who are around, and I might be interested in somebody who's board certified. So maybe I want to, narrow down to that. Maybe I want somebody who definitely accepts, in-network insurance. So now it's like, boom, okay, I've got it narrowed down. And maybe I want somebody who's in Reston, let's say. So I know that I'm going to go with somebody here at Endodontic Excellence. And so let's take a look at Dr. Stephen Kim, and maybe we'll go visit their website, and then we'll actually convert here by setting an appointment. And so this is, obviously like kind of a twofold conversational spectrum, because you're learning a lot here with the association that represents all of these individuals, but then actually converting with the individual practitioner or the agency themselves. But that kind of highlights the fluidity of how these conversations should go. And going all the way back to the top to actually answer your question specifically, what you need to be doing when you're putting yourself in your audience members, when you're in your persona's shoes, is thinking like you would conversationally. At the end of this, you wouldn't just kind of be like, if we were to meet each other socially and go like, all right, so that's what a root canal is. and then bail,
a good one.
you're going to be like, hey, like, do you have any questions? Would you like to, like, hey, I know somebody who actually lives near you, who has an office near you. Would you like an introduction to them? Whatever. In the same way that you would basically have some conversational cues to extend the conversation. That's what you want to do. The tricky part is, obviously, this is a very one-sided conversation. So our nature to have conversational cues to invite feedback or the other person to converse and share information isn't possible or easily possible online. So you have to kind of think about it as like a very one-sided conversation with perhaps a very introverted new friend or somebody who's very shy and doesn't speak a lot. How would you keep that conversation going? You would normally have appropriate calls to action at the end of each stage. And so, I mean, for some of our clients, you will see a straight line from oblivious, call to action to the curious, call to action to the intrigued, call to action to the invested, call to action to the converted stage, where it's very linear. Sometimes you might have a more complex offering. If you're an IT provider and you offer a whole lot of varied services, you might have multiple calls to action at the end. So the rule of thumb there is you don't want to overwhelm people either. If I said at the end, like, would you like to know about some other people that I know about, or my bowling game last week, or would you like to know about the park near me? You're going to drown people with too many options. So you usually want to stay with like, hey, if it's as simple and linear as like the next step of this conversation is X, then just do X. If there's 2, X and Y is okay. 3 if need be, and that tends to be like you have to prove that that's like an exception that proves the rule as opposed to a norm, because 3 starts to get into a little bit more of the pogo sticking behavior and people being uncertain about what to do next. And I would say usually limit it there. If you're getting to 4 and beyond, those need to be like contextual links within the article itself or references at the end or something like that.
Good answer. Good walkthrough.
Well, I know that was also very long, so hopefully it answered your question.
It did. And you gave a lot of answers to some other questions that I had as well. And just thinking through, because I also am trying to think of the into. Oh, hey, there's me. We're just gonna do that. There we go. I was also thinking about like the organizations that we work with and the associations and the nonprofits. They have a smaller team, so they don't have this giant IT tech support side, or they don't have this team of 10 people, or in their marketing it's normally 1, maybe 2 people, and they're doing 10 or 20 different jobs under that specific title and whatnot. So as we begin to wrap up for today's episode, because great conversation, I also want to be respectful of your time because you've got things going on. I would love to know, like, if you could give a specific, like you had just mentioned a second ago about like calls to action. Is there something easy, very softball, that a comms director or a marketing director or somebody that's working on the website could easily do? Maybe take an hour or 2, look through their website, that they can just focus on and say, hey, if I make some changes here, it would really help that conversation element in how we come across on the website. Is there any recommendations that you would have?
Oh man, I want to give all of the answers all at once. I'll go with 2. So 1, if it's like real simple, like if you already have content on your website and you just feel like it's not converting as well as it could be, one of the things that we suggest any organization does, sometimes will help people do, is take a look at your analytics, look at your highest already performing pages, articles, whatever the case might be, and then go back and review them. And if they don't have calls to action or contextual links throughout them, put your top 5 on a list. And if you've got an hour, take 1 or 2 of them and just go through and do some punch up and think about like, okay, what's the call to action that should be at the end of, this article, and just do that one step. Those are things where you've already got a lot of traffic coming in. So what you're just trying to do is, in the same way you might have a conversation with a lot of people, just trying to extend that conversation, make it feel a little bit more natural, a little bit more personal. That's bare bones, simplest one you can do. If you want something that's a little bit more of a project, that maybe you do a little bit of something once a month, it's maybe a couple quarters initiative. We do something called the content needs matrix, which is we take a look at all of your different personas and we think about what questions do they have for your organization about your product, your offering, your people, whatever the case might be. And usually what we try to do is make sure people aren't predicating it on the existing website. So we'll invite their teams, like customer facing teams like support, sales, et cetera, tend to be really good people to have in on this. And you do a brainstorm meeting and you just go like, no question is too obvious or too detailed or too technical. Just put all the questions into a big old spreadsheet or something. And then think about, do these questions apply to all of our personas or only maybe specific ones? And then do we answer this question on our website right now, yes or no.
Hmm.
And so you can start with saying like, hey, if these are important questions to answer and we're not answering them, let's make sure we answer them. And so that can be your guide for new content to create. If you do answer them, it's also a good chance to go through and kind of think about like your content governance plan. Do we need to review it? Is it the kind of thing that changes with time? You'll see with a lot of medical sites and stuff, this content was updated or reviewed by a physician as of this date, and they try not to let it get stale. So there's no outdated methodologies or treatments. Same may be true for engineering standards or product specifications and all kinds of stuff. So that can be a really useful mechanism. And then that just kind of folds into your content plan.
Awesome. I mean, simple, straightforward, applicational, which I think is something that we want from these videos, is those individuals and those organizations that are watching these videos, they're walking away with, hey, here's something that we can do. But it wouldn't also, if you need more help, you can always reach out to us at Yoko CO, Yoko SoCo, Yoko Coco, all of those. Do we have that URL, Yoko Coco? Like, can we buy that?
We'll have to look it up.
Lord
knows the one problem we have is not having enough domain names.
Well, if there is anything that we can do to help, please don't hesitate. Reach out. Let us know. It could be anything from understanding your web presence to designing the entire website from scratch, or figuring out what your persona might be, or the personas that for your organization. These are just a few very small things that we take care of and that we help organizations with. So we're excited to help you if you have a need that we can support you with. Chris, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out and share your knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. I appreciate you making it happen, dude.
Yep. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Bye.